Hi, everyone. I wanted to welcome you all today to our roundtable discussion on Cloud Connects in the Midwest. I'm your host, Joy Milkowski, and I'm really excited to be here with some folks that I respect and admire in and around the Midwest to talk about these important cloud topics. I'm really honored to be joined by Tony Thacker. He is the CTO at Great Plains Communications. Really just, Tony, so curious to get your perspectives, from the carrier side and kind of what you're seeing. Todd Cushing joining us from 1623 Farnham. Obviously, Todd, your perspectives from a data center viewpoint are going to be really helpful. And you're actually doing a lot of really neat things in sort of the cloud connectivity space that I'm going to be excited to hear more about. Of course, Daniele Lofreda, one of our friends from Siena. Daniele, just obviously you get a front row seat to the way people are using these solutions and what they're doing. So, just thank you for being here from Siena. Obviously, Siena has graciously sponsored this event and really just made sure that we had an amazing person here to talk about this today. My vantage point on this is I get the chance to talk with a lot of folks, a lot of different carriers, data centers, and really understanding really what's driving trends for enterprises and even down into the SMB and mid-market. So, what's interesting is we've got our panel today, and I'd like to just welcome you all and have you tell us a little bit about your perspectives coming in on cloud. So if we can maybe just go around the room just to talk about what your perspectives on cloud are coming in. Todd, can you get us started?
Sure. We're about as edge as it gets. We're right in the middle of the country. So we have a lot of hyperscale around us, and we have some hyperscale that are not yet in the Omaha metro. So we're in Omaha, Nebraska. And with that said, there are the tools like what Great Plains Cloud Connect has that allows people to get to those tools. So people have multiple cloud tools, and sometimes I think people don't realize how many cloud relationships they have. But we have a lot of migration for enterprise and for healthcare and other large entities migrating to cloud for a lot of reasons. But it's a wildfire almost of migration towards cloud, and it's not any one solution fits all. It's not one relationship works for everybody. And having multiple tools like a Cloud Connect or an on-ramp is a good way to go. So is what we see.
Great. Daniele, what about you?
So at Siena, we work directly with enterprises of all sizes. We work with service providers like Great Plains Communications, and we work with hyperscalers. And what we see is a real evolution in cloud, right? They're calling Cloud 2.0, Cloud 3.0, et cetera. But what it really talks about is this notion of hybrid cloud, distributed cloud, and edge cloud, depending upon the workloads and the enterprise needs. And like Todd said, there's no cookie cutter approach to any enterprise because different enterprises that are at different stages of their cloud evolution. But the real key is, regardless of where it's a far off data center, a localized data center, or even edge compute, the connectivity needs are becoming a critical piece of that equation.
Great, and hopefully, Tony, you might be back in. And I'm sorry, we've had a few technical difficulties because, of course, what would a roundtable be if we didn't have some technical difficulties this morning? Well, then, while we're trying to get Tony.
I'm back on.
Oh, you're here.
Yeah. I'm on audio.
Okay, great, Tony. Tony, tell us a little bit about your perspectives. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing here at Great Plains is, more and more, customers are really looking for, access to their applications wherever they live, right? So they're looking for, connectivity to, public cloud. They're looking for, better, a more efficient way of leveraging all the capabilities that are out there. And part of that is, getting the right access. As Todd mentioned, there's hyperscalers in 1623. Which is kind of unique for us here in the Midwest, having access to someone that's close to home. and just, really they're just looking for help with with their day-to-day, operations.
Yep, I hear that. And I think what I don't want to do with today's conversation is talk about, the macro and try to boil the ocean. I think what we really need to focus on today for the people listening, we have a variety of businesses listening, and organizations, some in education, some enterprises, and some kind of in that small to mid-sized business space. So I guess what I want to do with when I'm hearing your insights is really figure out how we relate this information to really enterprises of all sizes. So,
Yeah.
so what I would say is maybe let me start by sharing kind of an interesting set of statistics that I found. And they all signs point to more and more cloud adoption. So where, are you seeing the same things? I mean, obviously these are, analysts and companies paid to do these surveys, but what are you seeing? Are you seeing this cloud adoption? Are you seeing private cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud? Are you seeing that bear out in the Midwest? Tell me more. Tony, let's start with you.
Yeah, we're seeing really kind of a slower adoption. Yes, I mean, as you talk about kind of multi-cloud, right? Most applications, that live in the cloud. So, our customers are looking to kind of get access to really those applications. This what we're seeing basically is, folks are looking at, okay, today we use the internet. How do we kind of get to a more secure, more bandwidth, and how do we get, better access, to the cloud? So, for example, we have customers that are headquartered in Omaha. They have their data centers and their headquarters there, and then they actually, have branch offices around the country. And not only, they need our headquarters or the data center access, they need to also figure out how do I provide all of these services, to all my, my customers in multiple locations. So that kind of speaks to, they need a solid connectivity solution. They need to get, access, from their headquarters, to the data center, and access to, where the cloud application lives. For example, 360 lives in Azure, so they need to get access that via and redundancy too, not necessarily in one location, but multiple locations to make sure that there's the uptime is as high as possible.
Yeah, Joy, I just kind of add on to what Tony said. From my perspective, the operative word is hybrid cloud, right? So again, there's the public data centers, and then private data centers, whether that's on-prem or hosted somewhere. But it really depends upon the industry and the particular enterprise within that industry. So, for example, healthcare and the large global banks with locations in the Midwest, they're still predominantly in a private cloud environment, especially for anything that is patient protected information, and some of those other like really mission critical applications. The other administrative applications, they're fine to put into public cloud. But even within the healthcare and finance industry, there are some that will favor a more public cloud, especially those that are in areas like Missouri and others that are prone to tornadoes. They learned the hard way that if they're keeping everything on-prem within their own metro area, a tornado can take the whole system down, right? So even within those specific verticals, there are different enterprises that will either go all public, all private, or this hybrid model. And it's really driven by the applications, right? Some of the applications like where they combine like artificial intelligence, machine learning, AR, VR, et cetera, that are very kind of bandwidth intensive, latency sensitive, they need that closer to what they're called the enterprise edge. The others, again, that can tolerate latency, they're fine to send to large data centers that might be further away. But the real key, as we said before, is the connectivity, right? And to accommodate those latency sensitive bandwidth intensive applications, they need bandwidth in peak, a lot of bandwidth in peak periods, but they don't want to overpay for bandwidth that they're not using in off-peak periods. And that's why you really need to work with the service providers to really understand, for all your different branches spread across the Midwest, what is the most efficient way to neither under architect or over architect the network to provide that connectivity.
I think you're right. The key part that would surprise me is that you have your dedicated private for all the enterprises you mentioned, but there are providers that are just doing storage, or people that are doing storage and compute, or people that are just, they can do either of those for private and then transition into a public through partners or through their application. So their niches are developing, and people are really good at what they do. And there's a lot of connectivity or interconnectivity within an enterprise to those partners to pull those large enterprises together.
So how are these the cloud providers themselves? I was recently reading something that AWS is creating their local zones and prioritizing new markets for their local zones and things like that. Like, obviously, the cloud providers understand the growth and the migration to cloud, and they're prioritizing direct connects, right? So not only, they're building new products and doing the things that they do, but they realize the importance of private connections to the cloud. What are you believing is the future of that? Is it going to go to smaller and smaller markets? Are they going to aggregate in certain markets? What are you seeing there, and what do you think they're going to do?
We have large cloud players that are connected and large cloud players that tell us they intend to connect. So they will certainly, in this metro, eventually be here in one shape or form. It's where are you at on their priority list? So they're hitting markets or regions or geographies or client business is pulling them into places. But for us, what we see is it's an eventuality they will be here. It's just when. Direct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think some applications that are, latency sensitive, that's, the strategy really is to go deeper in the network, right? Push out to the edge, whatever the edge is defined. So, that's what I think, a lot of these, the cloud, they know applications need to be closer to where it's consumed. And so, over time, I see that, moving more and more towards the edge, right, into smaller, mid-sized markets.
Yep, I agree. And as I said, I don't think the hyperscalers, they want to get closer to, the enterprise customers at that edge. They don't necessarily want to be in the business of being a service provider, right? Conversely, the service providers who have all those assets, they don't necessarily want to be in the compute and store business. So I think, we're going to see over the next 5 years or so, this more partnerships between the cloud providers and the service providers to get, that compute and store capacity closer to that edge, without either one of them having to adopt a new business model, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up, in the different cities. But it's all being driven by, those applications that Tony mentioned that are so critical to the businesses. But then, it goes to something else that Tony spoke about originally, is you've got companies that are headquartered in the Midwest that have locations everywhere, and you've got companies that are headquartered elsewhere with lots of locations in the Midwest, right? So the key is, like, how do you connect to those applications to optimize the performance and the security, right? Because again, there's all that conundrum of security versus performance. And then it goes back to, for all those locations, even the remote, is that a business internet access, or is that some sort of Ethernet or MPLS type of connectivity? And then, do you connect each of those locations directly to the cloud, which was kind of overkill and expensive, or do you have different kind of configurations that can aggregate and take that through? So again, that's why I say there's no one cookie cutter approach. It really is going to depend upon the customer and location. But I'm not sure they've really broken the code on direct connect, and is that business internet, is that going to provide that security and performance versus having circuits that are connecting each one of the locations to the cloud provider? I think that's still to be determined.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think today, right, more folks are using the internet to really get access. One thing we haven't talked about yet is really fiber, right? Fiber connectivity is another key part of getting the bandwidth and getting applications out to customers, right? So not only do you need to have a core network or a metro network, you need an access network where you could provide that bandwidth, the fiber and secure direct connection. But I think today more folks are using internet to get access, and they're now starting to look at these direct connect models, to really add more bandwidth and optimize their applications.
I think you're right, Tony. People often don't understand cloud, but they understand internet, and they can work their way through an app or a good sales team to get that to work and wrap their head around it, versus how the heck do I move forward with cloud? Help me out. If they're not super sophisticated and they're a small to medium-sized enterprise, they need somebody, a client service team or a tech team, SEs, to help them get there. And an internet approach sometimes is more straightforward for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complex area, right? This is not, it's not a plug and play, right? So this whole area, I mean, it's one part of it is really, getting compute and storage, but I think the networking piece of this component makes things a lot more complicated. In the old days, everything was in a data center, and the way you connect was really a cable, that's anywhere from 100, up to 100 meters. Now that cable spans from a physical location, in downtown Omaha, or in other parts of, for example, Nebraska, all the way, back to, the data center 1623 in case of, Todd's case. And also from there, where does these apps actually live? So then you need to get from there, whether it's out at, in the Bay Area, whether it's out in Ashburn, Virginia, so it's the connectivity and the networking piece is a lot more complicated than it was in the past.
Right. And as an example, we have hyperscale that would be maybe direct connect to us, but their partners might be here as opposed to someplace else, and it's all part of access, security, control. That'll be different if you wanted to cloud connect or connect to something else that wasn't here. So using again the internet or a connect product to get to Azure or AWS is how you're going to do that. If you wanted, if you didn't want to work with what was local.
Yeah, and I think enterprises, they want to focus on their business, right? They want to focus on applications for healthcare, applications for finance. They don't necessarily want or can afford to have staff, a big amount of staff to focus on the connectivity, piece of that. And that's why they would really rely upon, folks like Todd and Tony to probably put a solution together, right? And how does that look like? Does the enterprise customer care if they got, excuse me, a circuit that connects each one of their locations, direct to that cloud, or through aggregation into some, whether the access is through 5G or Ethernet or whatever, and then access and aggregate that back to the core. They don't necessarily want to know that. They just want to know that they've got a connection, and that if they're on a webinar like this, that the image doesn't go down or the audio doesn't go bad, right? And so that's why, as we say, we are working from home a lot. Just our residential internet access, sometimes it works really well. For me, it seems like the most critical points is when it goes down, right? And so you say from either the home, which is increasingly becoming a permanent office, or you go back to your office. For certain applications, you're going to want a business quality type of connection. Others, you don't mind if the connection goes down, but I just tell you, over the last year, I've had just at the worst moments, my internet access go down, right? So I'm sure I'm not the only one doing that.
How much is how much is cost a factor here? How much is budget, right? You all talk with enterprises and businesses and carriers and all, like, tell me from a connecting to the cloud standpoint and all the different sort of options available, is cost coming into play, and where?
That we found through campaigns for Connect products or other things that we were running, and we're neutral, but for Connect products that we would partner with one of our customers. Sometimes a 90-day trial, free port, check it out, feel it, get access to it, play with it, helps get people past it because they don't have to go into their leadership without knowledge. So sometimes the technical people can touch it, feel it, and then build a case because now they've had hands-on experience that they wouldn't otherwise have. You can't get that at a trade show. You don't necessarily get that unless you've had experience hands-on. But we do find some of that might be just the upfront, get them over the threshold. There's a little bit of a cost element there.
Yeah, I mean, I think cost always is a question on every CIO's mind. So I think that's always a question. So then there's different approaches in order from a cost and different connectivity methods, right? In terms of, you could use internet or DIA, you could use Ethernet, you could if you need a lot of bandwidth, you could use a dedicated wave, you could use a Cloud Connect solution. The prices for direct is getting more and more attractive. One of the annoyances of using the internet in terms of kind of costs, right? It doesn't cost much to kind of get your data, to the cloud, but if you need your data back, if you need to export that data back, that's where some of the hidden fees, come in with charges for that. So in the case of a direct connect, your cost is kind of predictable and more static than unpredictable in the case of internet, especially for larger bandwidths. You start getting over a couple hundred meg, then cost becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah, where is my data and what would it take for me to recover it as a question, then you probably go down a different path.
Yeah, and that again, it goes to in a direct connect model, from a redundancy and sustainability perspective, do you need two separate connections? Or again, as I said, do you put it into some sort of configuration where it is honed into one or two regional locations that then has the backup circuits to the cloud? So again, you've got cost, performance, security, and BCDR, right? So all of those considerations go into those decisions. Joy, I think you're muted.
Forgive me, I try to keep my noise down in case I had a delivery truck, of course, arrive when we were talking about timing earlier. What are you seeing, and you can see my screen, like, what are you seeing are the misconceptions? Are there misconceptions around performance, cost, security? Are there misconceptions by small, mid, large? Tell me more. Tell me what you're seeing that you might think we should just maybe start to dive into as to things that you're seeing, assumptions that we should challenge, perhaps.
I mean, I'll take a first step. I know because again, we deal a lot with healthcare, government, education, finance. There's like two different schools of thought, right? One is that security in the cloud will never be better than what I can do in my own private premises, right? And so they're loath to put anything that is identification protected sort of thing into that public cloud. Now, the other school of thought is, hey, AWS and the others, they are providing services to the federal government, and they've been able to show that they can adhere to the strictest security standards. And so why wouldn't I trust them? So again, there's different schools of thought, and I don't know that you're ever going to convince one over the other, but that's the reality that I think we're all facing.
I think if you're doing record keeping or transactional things, you might go down one approach. If you're doing AR, VR, bandwidth and throughput are a big deal. As you're potentially putting a knee surgery out in the cloud, it's going to matter for security. Some bandwidth is going to be a big deal, but there are people doing that type of bandwidth, and it's mass. It's definitely happening today. We have seen augmented virtual reality challenges that people have done, and they're doing this over shared storage, shared compute, and it's impressive to see not what they're just doing with AI or VR, but it's impressive that it functions and the throughput and the imagery is so good for the platform they're using to do it. It's pretty impressive.
And that brings up another issue, especially in the healthcare environment, right? There's the technology solution that would say, hey, that's impressive, and that is having it in the public cloud and you got the right connection is good. But again, from the regulatory perspective and the HIPAA rules, if you can do anything to reduce the potential for your liability and exposure, right? Why not do it, right? So that's my, people might say, yeah, I want to keep everything, on premises in a private data center, even though the imaging, from that 3D knee MRI would be the same, whether it's on private or public, but just the fact that having it in the public could raise potential issue for liability, I'm going to go with a private and what I can control. So again, there's the technical, and then there's the regulatory and the compliance sort of question.
This is probably an unfair question because you're going to tell me that it ranges. So I'm going to try to ask you to make a bold statement here. Do you feel like people really understand the security issues, or are they trying to go with cost over security? Do you think it's case by case? Do you think it's industry based? Do people really understand the security implications of public versus private connection, or internet versus private connection?
Again, we're neutral. We don't have a lot of people ask the question about costs. They're looking for it to work. They need to be secure. They need it to work. What a developer needs to do a 3D image versus somebody that's spinning up a hologram is totally different. And it's different aspects of, okay, I'm going to develop this and share the data in 3D, but if I'm going to go to another level, or what my actual work product is another level, it's a different task on what they're asking the application team to do.
Yeah, I think Tony had a point, and I'll go after him.
Oh, Tony, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I think one of the items is security, but as we talk to CIO, whether it's in the healthcare or agriculture or whatever vertical, I mean, one, yeah, they want to make sure there's a secure way of getting their data back and forth from cloud. Traditionally, that's been the internet with a VPN, for example. And if there's transactional applications that Todd's outlined in there, yeah, that bandwidth, if it's 100 meg or less, it's adequate there. But as you go up for applications that are video based that consume more bandwidth, I mean, that's when you need really a direct type of a connection, because the internet is not going to get you the bandwidth there. And having a direct connection there is secure, but there's still some doubt in there moving from the internet, because customers are accustomed using VPNs across the internet, to get data back and forth. So I think in some cases, some customers need to be, convinced of that. But I think you need to look at the whole big picture, not just, security. You need to look at performance. We had, one of our Cloud Connect customers, they're, as they're kind of looking at their, transformation. This isn't healthcare. They were, looking at a combination of things. They're looking at, performance. What does the performance look for a direct connect versus the internet? And performance, meaning things, like latency and throughput. How secure is that circuit that leaves my premise and goes out to public cloud? What's the cost, and is there diversity? Could I get my app routed, through Omaha, for example, and a separate route through Chicago, so there's circuit redundancy. So I think all of those things have to be considered or are considered, and it depends on the application, right? If it's low bandwidth, I think you could still, over the internet is fine. But as you go up in higher bandwidth, things that are, requires higher bandwidth, I think a direct connect makes better sense.
Yeah, and I think, what is the technology under that direct connect, right? So Tony mentioned a couple, like 3 key, pieces: performance, security, cost, and within the performance, that's ensuring enough capacity to handle those applications. But when you get that kind of that trade-off, especially capacity versus cost, then you're looking at, as you get above 100 meg sort of needs, that's when you're looking at the benefits of an Ethernet type of service. Obviously, again, because Ethernet can provide that high bandwidth when you need it, 1 gig, 10 gig, 100 gig E, but it doesn't have the costs associated with the wavelength types of services. Because again, there's peak periods during that 8 to 5, but then weekends and nights you're not using it that much. So you got to boil in that cost piece of it. So again, as we see a lot more enterprises starting to look at the Ethernet types of services, because it does give them that flexibility, performance, and cost, checks all those boxes.
Can a direct connect, you're right, someone thinking about this, can this really catapult them into an Ethernet strategy? I need a little education on this, right? Is this a step function into a better Ethernet strategy overall? Maybe Tony, I'll direct that to you.
Yeah. I mean, Ethernet is really the conduit here for, as Daniel started mentioning, right? Ethernet is a fundamental transport method for a lot of these connectivity, whether it comes in 100 meg, a gig, 10 gig, 100 gig. It's a fundamental transport. The Metro Ethernet forum obviously made this very popular a decade ago, but this is a de facto standards that service providers use today, for any kind of data transport, and have really leveraged this Ethernet capability for Cloud Connect. So when you kind of look at Cloud Connect applications, fundamentally Ethernet is the de facto transport media from the enterprise location, that to the data centers and to the private cloud. It's fundamentally Ethernet. I think that's a given, and maybe we're overlooking that. And the service providers, that's kind of our bread and butter. We do that every day. We're turning up an Ethernet pipe, between location A and location Z, and we're looking at how we get more efficient at delivering these services, and then adding on SDN capability to really manage these Ethernet-based services more effectively.
And Todd, you've been awfully quiet. I'm sorry that the conversation's sort of been rolling around you. If there's anything you want to add, please do.
No, I think Tony, as usual, is spot on. The Ethernet is fundamental. If you look at what people are used to using, what they're comfortable with using, It's a fundamental transport that people want to use. We have a lot of fiber in our facility, but we have people internally that want to use Ethernet and they use Ethernet, for their transport. So I think we're in alignment there. I agree.
Great. Well, obviously, one of the things that we've all been seeing is sort of the egress fees. If you're using an internet connection versus a direct connect, you may be hit with some surprise fees from the cloud provider that you potentially weren't anticipating, or maybe it was in the contract somewhere and you forgot about it. How are you seeing it? And obviously, this could be one of the things that a direct connect could solve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really a key, one of the key differentiators between using internet and direct connect. No CIO want to be surprised at the end of the month when they get a bill that they're expecting it to be, $1,000 a month. It's $5,000 for that month, because these are all operating expenses, right? So I mentioned earlier, right? You want more of a predictable cost in your environment, so it's not changing every month. It's hard to kind of predict that, so that's what direct connect. I mean, you nail up the circuit and you pay a fixed fee for that bandwidth. If it's a gig, for example, you pay a fixed fee for that, so you're not kind of surprised about some of these egress charges when you get your bill, right? It's kind of like in the old days of voice, when you look at your long distance bill. It's a big number, and nowadays you don't really think about it, but it's similar to that.
Yeah, I think the provisioning has not ever been easier. It's apparent what the costs are when you're provisioning, and it's easy to make changes.
Yeah, that's a very good point there, Todd. Right? I mean, this world is a bit different in terms of provisioning, in terms of how you manage it, right? So you could spin up a gig between point A and Z very, very quickly, near real time. And if you have a specific time of day type application, you could increase the bandwidth for that application and then decrease it. That's what the capability of this an SDN network really allows you to do. Flexibility for provision and services.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. In addition, a lot of service providers, like Tony's company, they're deploying more software-defined types of networking technology that not only provides like a portal to very quickly up or increase or decrease your bandwidth kind of on demand, but also they're looking at types of AI machine learning enabled analytics that can look at all of the traffic going across the network, based upon the telemetry that they're able to gather from the switches, and they're really able to run it through some programs that can very accurately predict, when and where an instance like congestion or outage might occur, and then based upon working with a customer and determining a policy, can automatically take action to proactively head that off, rather than having to wait till there's a situation and then it takes a while to resolve. So as the management and tracking of this network technology evolves, it's making it more and more feasible for that enterprise customer to be more agile in their operations.
Yeah, one example to kind of take that further. This is kind of a passion of mine around automation and orchestration. Even in our own internal network, we have our head ends connected between Nebraska and Indiana, and we have a primary circuit. And we're waiting for the diverse circuit. It's taken a while for our partner to get that turned up. In the interim, what we did is we just connected the head ends, across our SDN network. And if there's a fiber cut or there's any kind of issues with the primary route, it automatically gets routed across that SDN infrastructure. So there's really zero downtime.
Tertiary approach,
Well, when you go into that level of detail, you're probably over my head a little bit, but I'm glad that the people listening completely understand that. I want to dig into a little bit more on the cost side. I know we've spent a lot of time here, but one of the reasons why we're spending time here is because it's sort of germane to the conversation. I'm gonna show something that's something that we've found, and honestly, Tony, thank you, because I think you've helped us put this together before, but there's just quite a bit of substantial cost savings that can be realized with direct connects. And I don't know whether people have seen sort of a quantification of this, if they really understand, and so obviously, Tony, any insight you can lend here or, help us understand. I mean, obviously this is not trivial, right? And when you're talking about CIOs and CTOs thinking about budgets and where they need to deploy dollars and how they make serve all the internal stakeholders of organizations, I mean, this can be meaningful, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is not well understood. I mean, to your point, putting a slide like this in front of the CIO, I think they're not going to necessarily fully understand that this is definitely a benefit. So having quantitative data like this really helps, helps make the decision to go to a direct connect model. I mean, this is, the cost. I mean, I think at the end of the day, really cost is one of the decision points. I mean, along with because of the performance, right? I mean, I think cost alone is not the only thing. You have to show that you're going to reduce in latency. One example we had with a customer, they were looking at an application between kind of the Midwest and the Far East, and if you think of how many routers that application touches as it transfers from the Midwest, right? Say from Omaha to Chicago, to Seattle, all the way across to Japan, for example. I mean, that's a ton of latency that adds up, and your application is probably going to time out. But back to your specific question around cost, I think at the end of the day, costs will drive the migration to direct connect. All the big providers are pushing it. I think putting a slide like this with the facts in front of it that shows that it's that as you go up in bandwidth, you definitely will have significant savings over the internet. Smaller bandwidth, 10 meg, it's really hard to prove that in, but at 100 meg and above, I think it's a clear winner.
And Daniele, I know, you look like you're itching to weigh in too. So obviously, if there's anything you're seeing from your seat, please share.
Yeah, no, I agree. Cost is very attractive. Then you also have to look at, you're the CIO and you go in front of your board and say, hey, I saved us 35% or whatever, right? Then someone says, yeah, but our surgeons couldn't, it took our surgeons like 15 minutes to be able to make a decision on, that heart MRI, right? And then the CISO comes and says, hey, you know what? We were hacked or whatever. So again, it's always, you got to look at all the different components before you put this in front of people. But I have to admit, very, very attractive.
Yeah, looking at the numbers, I'm not surprised to see where they're at. That's what I would expect.
Yeah, and Todd, what's interesting?
If you're able to say, I saved 58%, and the surgeons are happier, and the CISO says we haven't been hacked in 3 months, then you're the hero.
Sure. Sorry, Tony, I didn't mean to cut you off if there was something you were going to add.
No, I think Danielle is right on, right? I mean, cost is one part of the equation, right? If it's cheap and doesn't work, who needs it, right?
Sure. So Todd, from your seat, you've got new cloud providers coming in, creating, obviously a presence in 1623. Tell us what the future looks like for you. From your seat, I'm going to ask you to put on your prognostication hat, right? Where's this going? What are you seeing? And this is being recorded so we can tell you if you're wrong later.
Okay. No, we have multiple, I'll say hundreds of accounts without giving away their secrets, but multiple past hundreds of accounts going in just today. There are people in there stringing new fiber to different floors as they expand. And they're telling us, count on 320 to 400 kW coming on for this. And they're cloud partners is what they are for those direct folks. So these are Fortune companies that manage storage, that do storage and compute, that those hyperscale are prepping to be able to receive, and those partners are typically in our facility. So we're doing cross connects to connect them to those hyperscale folks, and it's growing fast. We aren't a very concentrated revenue business, but there's a lot of growth in all of them across the board. So it's not like there's one particular leader that we would be, hey, this is the biggest client by far. There isn't that. It's non-concentrated growth across the board of people doing storage and compute, putting in a lot of connectivity. To Tony's point earlier, it's direct fiber, but there are other people with other options. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and but the real throughput, depending on how you're using the application or how you're using the cloud. For the people that are really using it, leveraging it throughout their business, head wrapped around how they're using it, it's a direct. That's what's going on, and it's expanding fast.
So Daniele, your turn. The future, cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, direct connects. Tell us what you're seeing and what you think is going to happen.
Yeah, no, I see across all enterprise sizes, you're going to see this movement towards what we call distributed cloud, right? And distributed cloud is closer to the edge, or in a metro micro data center, or at the far edge cloud. But it's also going to be a multi-cloud approach. Enterprises aren't going to be satisfied just dealing with applications that one cloud provider can host or provide. So you're putting this multi-cloud integration along with the connectivity, and the putting that compute closer to the edge. And that's where I think there's going to drive more towards this notion of like SD-WAN at the premises, that you're able to have different types of connectivity for your mission critical and secure. You might have an Ethernet type of connectivity for that is not latency sensitive or secure. You can have just a internet access. But I think that SD-WAN, and they're calling it SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, which is more virtualized at the enterprise prem. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Great. Tony, what about you? Obviously you've got a really unique vantage point because, cloud connectivity is only one part of what you do. You sort of look at things holistically from the customer's point of view, right? From an enterprise or small to mid-sized business. How do you see this all tying together with their connectivity, and networking strategy?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is, more and more customers, whether they're enterprise customers, they need, connectivity to their applications. They live in multiple clouds, right? Whether that's, Google or Azure, Alibaba. I mean, those applications live, in different places. They also need to get access to their, SaaS applications, right? So things like, Salesforce. Those, all of those apps are now in the cloud, honestly. So you can't really start a business and don't have access to the cloud. So our customers are, where I see this going, our customers are going to need more and more cloud access. They're going to need to get connectivity from their premise, to the data center where they may have some private applications that Todd's outlining. They may have compute and storage into that location, but they may need to get to Salesforce, right, for for their, managing of their suits. They may need to get the Workday for their flow through. They may even need to get to some of their billing applications. And so from our perspective, we see this as a great opportunity for providing connectivity services, whether that's Ethernet, whether that's internet, whether that's Cloud Connect. So our customers really could get connected, to cloud, connected to other locations. I mentioned examples, and Danielle brought up one is SD-WAN, right? SD-WAN is a very popular application. Basically, our customers have headquarters in one location. The data centers may be in a different location. For private, they need to get to, public applications. They have branch locations. SD-WAN provides a complete solution so that they can actually get access with different access methods, whether it's fiber, Ethernet, internet, wireless. So they could get to their applications wherever they live, from anywhere in the world. So
and Tony,
cloud is there to stay. Cloud is there to stay. It's just growing. If you think about the big providers, they're investing billions and billions of dollars, in infrastructure, and to some degree, connecting all their data centers together, leveraging, next generation type networking. So, I see this growing and growing and growing.
And Tony, I'm going to put you on the spot in our waning minutes, and really genuinely ask you, obviously we've had a lot of conversations around performance, security, cost, all around kind of the reasons why people really should be considering a direct connect strategy for connecting to the cloud. But let me ask you just sincerely, Tony, why Great Plains? Obviously, you're not the only ones out here beating this drum and talking about this. At the end of the day, if someone's listening to this and thinking I should talk to someone, why should they consider Great Plains Communications for a Cloud Connect?
Well, one is we have a backbone that connects to all the major locations in the Midwest. It goes as far west in Colorado, Denver area, north to Minneapolis, Chicago, down to Kansas City, east out to Indianapolis and Cincinnati. So we have a fundamental backbone and infrastructure to deliver connectivity service, to the clouds, and we're connected to many data centers around. We also have been invested heavily in our access and our fiber strategy. So not only are we, investing and can deliver services to the cloud, at the end of the day, the last mile or the access circuit is really kind of the next frontier. And that's where a lot of investment is happening now, is building out fiber to our customers so that they could get the right amount of bandwidth, whether that's an enterprise customer, small, medium, large, or even a residential customer, because they may be operating, their business, from their home. So they're looking for, additional bandwidth, additional capabilities. So at the end of the day, they have a cost-effective, secure, seamless experience as they're running their business.
You're modest. It's a level of professionalism and a team that's really good to work with. That's a big part.
Well, thanks, Todd. I mean, obviously,
Thanks, Todd.
your perspective is great because you work with lots of providers, and so to have that endorsement from you for Great Plains is honestly, really a great addition. Well, we're coming right up on the end of our time together. I would just like to sincerely thank the group here and, invite you. Tony's team has put together a pretty awesome guide to understanding Cloud Connects in the Midwest. Happy to send that out to anyone who'd like to see a copy of that. Danielle, sincere thanks to you for lending insights. And obviously from Sienna's perspective, the strength of Great Plains Communications rides on Sienna, right? The Sienna technology really undergirds what Great Plains is able to provide. And so many thanks for your contributions. Todd, 1623 Farnham, growing, becoming a real Midwestern hub and a real destination as a data center and really an influential partner in the Midwest. So thank you for joining us today. And obviously, Tony, thank you so very much for all of your insights today. So I want to bid everyone farewell and wish everyone a great day. And many thanks again to our attendees.